No.
What up, YouTube? How are you going today? How's it doing today? Wow, I can't even talk already. That's not good. So today
It's
we
been a long day, brother. Come on.
been a long week. Let's just talk about the week. Anyway,
Yeah.
so we're gonna talk about safe sport. You know, what do you have to do? What don't you have to do? Realistically, it's what you have to do. The requirements of training. Is it going to be good for the sport? And then we're going to talk about what's wrong with safe sport. You know, what are they doing that I think, and what a lot of people think is overstepping their bounds. And before we talk about that, I really want to recommend everybody to go to the right, follow the link below. We're partnered up with a company called The Right Profile, and they do mental training for athletes. We all want it. We all need it. We don't have time to do it. They have this thing set up for $99 a year. You get all of the mental training. Your athletes can do it right from their phones. Parents, go take the assessments. Athletes, go take the assessments. It's free to take. You're going to love the results. I promise you. So today we have Brian Kaiser with us. How you doing, Brian?
Dude, I'm doing well. You know, this is an interesting topic that we're fixing to cover. There's a number of people who don't understand that Safe Sport's more than just an organization. The Safe Sport, the Center for Safe Sport, and the Safe Sport Act of 2017 are all federal laws, and they're governed by federal laws, and they're funded federally. So I think what we're fixing to delve into is something that people may or may not know, may or may not understand, and they probably don't totally grasp the reality of what we're facing with these new laws that now govern all youth sports.
Yeah. A lot of you guys may have seen this. It's Sadler Sports and Recreation Insurance. They posted this thing out called "New Safe Sport Act applies to most amateur sports organizations."
Yep. And actually, you know, Brian, we got to clarify that one because I helped on that one because I got that through some sources, and I posted that out to a number of folks. A lot of these Facebook groups, I posted out on Twitter, posted out everywhere. Of all the PSAs that have been put out by a number of different entities, this one is probably the most concise. It's probably the most explanatory, and it's probably gives the least promotion of their insurance product. But it also has links for people to go check out. So that if you don't believe what they're saying, or you don't believe what we're saying, go check it out for yourself.
Oh yeah, guys, this thing was well written. Well, before we go any further, this is all in response to USAG's failures with Larry Nassar and all this stuff, and in my opinion, it's a very knee-jerk response to it. I think 90% of it's good. I think 90% of it good. Now that I've actually gone through and I read the act and everything, now the question is, how is it being implemented? And that's where we start finding the holes in the cheese, essentially.
Yeah, you know, Brian, interesting little story, little tidbit. Safe Sport actually started with swimming because swimming actually got into trouble before gymnastics did. Not on the same scale, nowhere near what these idiots have gotten us into with Nasser and all these other guys. Nowhere near. But they started with swimming. Safe Sport itself has been around for a few years, probably 3 to 5 years or whatever. However, it was taken a step further in 2016 when Dianne Feinstein, she came up with the bill that authorized the Center for Safe Sport and made it a federally governed center. And then, of course, the Act of 2017, which now has been signed into law as of February 2018 by Donald Trump, making the whole Safe Sport initiative now a law of the land. So it's very interesting to follow the guidelines. You know, a lot of people think that USA Gymnastics caused or created all of this problem in a way because they took something that was an issue and they made it giant. They did it better than anyone else and made it worse than anyone else. But you know, it's been around in sports for a while, and I guess this is just a culmination of that. And Larry Nassar is just the tipping point that broke the straw that broke the camel's back. and the federal government decided they had to step in and make laws.
Yeah. So Brian, we're just going to kind of stick to the outline that Dave presented to us with this article. So, do you think that safe sports going to be effective?
At first, when we first started getting into safe sport, and like I said, a lot of people didn't understand what safe sport was. They thought it was just something that USA Gymnastics had come up with, or the USOC had come up with. So it was kind of a knee-jerk reaction to a deep cultural issue. It is a knee-jerk reaction, I think. I think it's been taken a step further than what it probably needed to be, but at the same time, something had to be done. Something needed to be put in place, and laws needed to be made to kind of protect the athletes and everything. So in the long run, after reading this, after going and looking at the actual laws, the actual bills, the acts themselves, yes, I think it's going to be effective. I think it will do a good job over time. I think there's a lot of things to work out, which we'll get into in the article, but I think it's going to be effective long term.
Yeah, I think a lot of excuse me, a lot of people thought that, well, if I'm not part of a national governing body for a sport, then this really isn't going to affect me. And then after digging into it all, pretty much every amateur sports organization will fall under safe sport. Um, and I think that's quite a shock because there's no getting away from it. Everybody's like, well, if I just leave the national governing body and I go to a different governing body or different organization, I won't have to deal with it. I won't have to comply with these things. And you're wrong. So I thought that too. I was like, well, you know what? If just becomes too much of a hassle, then whatever. We just won't do USAG. But as it turns out, AGA, TAF, everything else, everything's going to have to apply. Apply under those standards.
Yes, and what's very interesting about that, Brian, is and people are just now opening their eyes. In fact, I've had to open some eyes, where I work and everything, because we have other sports in the facility, and if you study the what we have here from Sadler, and you also go study the new laws, every sport, amateur sport, is under safe sport. And the organizations, the entire organization has to adhere to the safe sport policies for all the governing bodies that are housed in the organization. So no matter how big your group is, you're at a Y, you're at a JCC like I am, you're at a gym like you are, where you have 3 or 4 different, could have 3 or 4 different NGBs with the AGA or the TAF or whatever. All of those have their own rules and policies. All of those have to be adhered to, and all of them fall under safe sport.
Yeah, which
Soccer,
can be difficult.
Football, boom, boom.
I believe the way it's worded is any amateur competitor that has direct contact with adults.
Yes.
So it's something along those lines. So if you're an adult interacting with a minor who's an athlete doing a sport, you have to abide by safe sport from now on.
Right. And, Sadler breaks it down really, really interesting. It says non-GB sports organizations include those teams, leagues, camps, sports facilities, tournament hosts, churches, and schools that participate in interstate or international amateur athletic competitions, and whose membership includes any adult who is in regular contact with an amateur athlete who is a minor.
Yeah. So everybody.
It leaves no gray area there.
Fall under it. Yeah. Everybody. Which isn't a bad thing. Realistically, it isn't a bad thing. There's only one big thing I think that we're all worried about, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But it's not a bad thing. I think the biggest new thing is now we, as gymnastics coaches and administrators and meet directors, we are all now mandatory reporters, and they have set it up as in you have 24 hours to report it, or the person who failed to report it can be subject to $150,000 civil fine, right? That would go back to the person that you were supposed to be advocating for.
Right. And, it, I guess the good thing that the act did, because there's several things that are still unclear, and there's still some other things that we're going to get into that probably should be addressed. But the law itself fully protects the person that's telling, that's reporting from any kinds of persecution or prosecution or retaliation in any way.
Hmm. It's that's really good. I think we can all get on to the same page on that one. Coaches and sports professionals should be mandatory reporters. Because in Texas, we were not mandatory reporters, I believe, unless you were like a child care facility or an actual teacher or something like an educational professional, something like that. So we were kind of on the fence of, do we have an obligation to as gymnastics professionals versus do we have the ethical and moral reasons to do it. So now it's very clear we have to, and that's even the suspicion of abuse, right? Sexual, emotional, physical abuse, right? So now we're going to get into some of the a little bit more nerve wracking topics. So um, somehow in all of this, Say Sport thinks they have the right, and I say think because I believe that they don't, um, to prosecute people for violating their policies, um, even though they have not committed a crime, right?
Yeah, and Brian, before we got on the show, and maybe you should read the section of the law, because I haven't pulled up there, but this is a very good point. This is very important for people to know because, like I mentioned a second ago, if you're in a facility or you're in an organization and there's multiple NGBs and that govern over sports or athletics that are housed under that organization, be it a Y or JCC or just a multi-sports complex that you have many, then those policies for each one of those NGBs or non-governing bodies. They could just be little leagues or what have you. Those policies must be upheld by each organization for
Mhm.
each organization. So if you violate one, even though you're not part of that, you're in violation.
Yeah. Well, when you start reading into it, you really find out that Say Sport is really there um, as a policy maker for companies. They're there to make sure everyone's on the same standard, right?
Right.
And which we can all agree is a fantastic thing. You know what I mean? Like you're not supposed to be one on one with an athlete. You're not supposed to, you have to make sure your facilities are set up in a certain way to make sure and your staff is trained. That's all great. That's all educational stuff. That's all stuff that we as a industry and a company can really grab onto. And then there's this one little spot in here, and I think that they took this one little paragraph and they ran with it. So it's under subchapter 3, um, point C, binding arbitration, and it says, in general, the center may, in its discretion, utilize a neutral arbitration body and develop policies and procedures to resolve allegations of sexual abuse within its jurisdiction to determine the opportunity of any amateur athlete, coach, trainer, manager, administrator, or official who is subject to such an allegation to participate in amateur athletic competition. So they are there to watch and make sure that if you've been accused of this, you have due process. You have, if I'm accused of doing something, right? Somebody calls it in, they call Salesport, hey, this is what's going on. They also have to call the cops, the police on me, right? They call the police are supposed to launch an investigation. Now, Sport kind of should be waiting for that investigation to be completed by the cops, right? That's really what they're there for. And then they're supposed to make sure, okay, I'm convicted, right? So now that I've been convicted, they're there to make sure that I'm not going to participate in this now that I'm a convicted felon, essentially, right? That's what they should be doing, right? But nope, they took it a step further. They created a thing called, I believe it's called the Safe Sport Code. Okay. So if you go on Safe Sport's website, look up Safe Sport Code. Okay. Now, if you violate the Safe Sport Code, they will launch an investigation into you, most likely suspend you during this whole investigation. And there's different levels of suspension. Like you may be not allowed to interact with children unless you're being supervised, or you may have no interaction, right? and you can't do that until the investigation's closed, right? Now they don't tell you how long this investigation could last or what it involves or anything like that. You can go in and try to look at the arbitration rules, but they're very long and lengthy and not very fun to read. But uh, all those like 40, 50, 60 pages of documents are all drawn up because it's one little paragraph in this thing.
Right.
Right.
And, the Sadler report tells us about all the stringent requirements of the NGBs. And the NGBs, because of the problems that we've seen with USA Gymnastics, swimming, I mean, there's others. AAU, people have been touting AAU. AAU has a whole list of problems too in their organization. So those are very stringent, but now it carries over to non-NGB sports, and we have the same policies that have to be adhered by. And if you break those policies, you've got the code to go by, and you've got to be a reporter and report people breaking the rules.
Well, Brian, if you violate a policy, they decide to put you through their process, all of a sudden you're out of luck. You didn't commit a crime, you didn't commit a felony, you didn't commit a misdemeanor, you didn't commit anything, and now you're essentially blacklisted from any amateur sports organization, and that's scary.
And that is whether it's a national governing body like USA Gymnastics, or if it's the local little league.
That's everything. You know what I mean?
Every youth sports organization.
And it's insane. They violate so many. I believe they violate the Sixth Amendment like straight up. You know what I mean? Because they kind of So the Sixth Amendment. Okay, so the defendant is supposed to be tried in the state in which they committed a crime, right? So, and they kind of circumvented it because they go, well, if they break a policy, then they don't get to really be tried by a jury in the state at which they committed the crime, right? Because they didn't commit a crime. So it's this weird little loophole on the law, and I'm guessing someone's going to get prosecuted essentially by Safe Sport, and then they're going to come after them. They're going to end up suing them because I believe their constitutional rights have been shot. They've been killed, violated. So and you can't blacklist somebody. That's an illegal task in itself too. You know what I mean? If I have a job in an industry and I break a policy, right? And I'm working for an organization. If I break a policy and I get fired for it, right? No big, I can go move to a different organization, right? Now if that field decides to blacklist me, that's illegal. Period.
Right.
So that's my problem with Safe Sport right now, and I think that they're opening themselves up, and I think that Safe Sport is doing a really good job in a lot of different ways, but they're too focused on prosecuting people before they've committed a crime.
Well, and you and I spoke about it off the air. Safe Sport, the way it's put together, seems very logical. Seems like it's going to be a good thing long term. But like I mentioned, in the opening piece, there's some things like checks and balances. Where are the checks and balances of this law? Where are the checks and balances built into the Center for Safe Sport? Where are the checks and balances built in? Because it indicates that it comes down to one person making the decision, like one judge making a decision whether you're in violation and you get blacklisted, or you're in violation and you get blacklisted, or you're in violation, you pay a fine, and you get blacklisted. So it's one person making the decision. Once that's made, it's done. It's final. There's no appeal. That's it. So you've got some different things going on, dynamics going on there. And the Sadler report, there's a part of it where it also says, some of these violations will be clarified over the next several years as suits are brought against the Safe Sport Act and against the Center for Safe Sport. So they left it very broad. They left it very, 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 very broad. And I think some clarification needs to be made. And I think as the clarifications are made, hopefully, calmer, cooler, smarter minds will prevail, and they'll put in some checks and balances So there is a person or a group of people that makes the decision based on evidence and facts and what have you. But there's also a review board that comes back behind that and reviews the work of the committee, of that person or whatever. Because I think there needs to be in anything that we do, especially when it's someone's livelihood and in this case, your reputation and your life, then I think there needs to be absolute certainty that the right decision was made, and there needs to be 100% accuracy that that person did something that was worthy of being blacklisted and not able or capable of working in amateur sports in any way anymore. Because once you're blacklisted, it's not like you can go over and start coaching in USA Tennis. It's not like you can go or start coaching swimming or boxing. Or once you're blacklisted, you don't work in sports anymore. You can't even get near sports anymore.
Well, and Brian, another problem is an allegation gets brought up against you. All of a sudden, yeah, you're very publicly, whether people want to admit it or not, you're very publicly put on this suspension list, and your reputation at that point,
you are shamed.
You are shamed. And guess what? A smart business owner probably is not going to hire you because they don't want to bring that drama into their program. People go, "Oh, he was on the ban list or he was on suspended list for 2 weeks because somebody accused him of doing this." That's bad for a business. You know what I mean?
Because you're guilty even though you're not guilty.
And I heard of something, what was it, a couple weeks ago? Someone got put on a ban list and didn't even, or excuse me, a suspension and didn't even know about it. They posted up on Twitter that they had no idea what was going on, that their contact center for safe sport. Now I don't want to bring names up, so I don't want to continue on with that, but I think that's terrible. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Some of these things, like I said, there's not any checks and balances. And I think that the reporting, I think that's fantastic. The mandatory training for everyone, I think that's fantastic. The mandatory training for people that are not involved in organizations that are a national governed by a national governing body like USA Gymnastics. Maybe it's just a local little league or the football association, whatever. I think that this is great. However, there needs to be a check and balance that says when the report is made, you're confidentially, your employer and you are alerted to this, and then maybe you take a vacation or something while they do a review and find out if this is legit. Because if it comes out that it's not legit, then you don't have a way of, not in any small length of time, over a period of time, maybe you could, people would forget and not look into it, but immediately you would have to go find a whole new livelihood. Especially if you're a full-time coach or athletic director or gym manager or even a gym owner, you may be put out of business. So you would have to go find a whole new livelihood because there's just no way that in the court of public opinion that you would be able to overcome it.
Yeah. And no due process, immediately defamed. I don't care what they say. It's defamation of character, assuming that you're innocent at least, but something has to be done, and we'd love for you guys to go ahead, subscribe if you like our content, and let us know what you think. If you think Safe Sport's a great thing, they're doing everything, if they're doing everything right, or if they need to change some stuff, go ahead and post it on the comments below. We're just trying to make sure everyone's aware of the changes that are coming up, aware of the problems that could occur, and to make sure that they're following all the policies, because there's a lot of financial responsibility that goes along with this now.
Yeah, and the Sadler report is up on Brian and Bryan. It's also up on the Gymnastics Association of Texas Facebook page for you to go to review. Don't get hung up on that. This public service announcement was done by an insurance company. Okay, the insurance companies are doing their job. This is what they are supposed to be doing. And I think this one did it the best, like I said, because they really don't promote their insurance that much. They actually have some other links that you can go to that will help you review your background checks. They'll review your procedures in your gym. So there's some other helpful tools in this report at the bottom. But the report itself is just the report, and it's very accurate on what the law says. It's very accurate on what the Center for Safe Sport is about and how it operates and functions. And it's also very well written so that you can understand it just read it once, you got it, and then you're going to have to go delve into how are you going to make all of your employees, parents, anyone that comes in contact or helps out, volunteers or whatever with events or whatever else goes on in your place of business or organization where adults and athletes are together.
Yep. All right, guys.
I mean, it's just that easy. So, hey, go check out the right profile, and check out our show next week. We'll come up with another just mind blowing topic like this. This was a good one though, Brian.
Yeah, it needs it. The word is out now, guys. We gotta spread this around like wildfire.
All right, get involved. We'll see you later.
Later, guys.